In 1970, I met the love of my life in Ozark, Alabama. This is the story of our adventures and our misadventures, our joys and our sorrows, and our journey through life together. In 1984, we took a real vacation. Prior to this, vacations were visiting relatives. This one started out the same by visiting Tim, but then we went exploring. Vacations would be different from 84 on. We started in Tucson, Arizona at Tim and Sherry's house. Lindsay was still in diapers at the time. While in Tucson, we visited Old Tucson, a frontier town. We then headed off on our adventure. Wapatuki National Monument was one of our first stops. That was followed by Montezuma Castle National Monument. The Petrified Forest National Park was on the agenda. But the highlight of the trip was the Grand Canyon. That first view took your breath away. We stayed at the Waswick Lodge. We hiked the West Rim, just you and I alone at the Grand Canyon. We also hiked down the Kaibab Trail. It was easy going down. It was a lot tougher coming up. We spent a lot of time just standing on the rim in awe. Our experience in '84 had taught us what a vacation was really like. In 1985, we headed off with Sandra and Russell Hightower. We flew from Tampa to Billings, Montana. We then rented a car and drove to Salt Lake City, Utah, stopping along the way at Yellowstone National Park, the Grand Tetons, and Jackson Hole, Wyoming. One of our first stops was at the Buffalo Bill Dam. It was quite windy. We then moved on to Yellowstone. This is where we encountered our first snow. We needed to find our hotel, but we explored a bit along the way. After checking in, we headed off to find the Natural Bridge. Back at the hotel, we had dinner. Then we crashed for the evening. The next morning, Russell went fishing. You, Sandra, and I all went to Old Faithful and walked the trails. On one of the trails, we found Solitary Geyser. On the morning of our second day, we checked out and started driving north. We made our first stop at the Mud Ponds. Next was the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone and its waterfalls. We hiked down Uncle Tom's Trail. It should have been called Uncle Tom's Steps. We had a picnic and we went exploring on our way to Mammoth Hot Springs. We arrived at Mammoth Hot Springs and checked in. We had a cabin. After checking in, we went to explore the springs. In our travels, we saw lots of animals. We saw several herds of buffalo. We saw mountain sheep and moose. It was always exciting to find elk. And of course, deer were always present. Grand Teton National Park was next on our agenda. We had reservations at Tagwati Lodge. While there, we went horseback riding into the mountains. Jackson Hole was quite interesting. Do you remember the elk horns they had stacked around the town square? Of course, who could forget the mangy moose and the tram ride up Rendezvous Mountain? Of course, the big attraction in Jackson Hole was the whitewater raft ride down the Snake River. The temperature was still in the 30s when we got up that morning, but we still went anyway. Russell and I ended up in the water. Russell pulled me in. I have proof. At the end of the ride, Sandy ended up in the water too, but she did it on purpose. I think she regretted it. While we were in Salt Lake City, we visited the Mormon Tabernacle. We also spent time at the Bonneville Salt Flats and the Great Salt Lake. Then it was time to pack up and head home.